Okay, we're live.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our virtual planning committee meeting. I will call the committee meeting to order. I'm Jeff Lehman, and I'm the winner of the Most Boring Zoom Background Award. Please enjoy. Before we get started tonight, we do have a public meeting on the agenda tonight, and that's for 217 Dunlop East. But I wanted to start tonight by recognizing two of the members of the planning department, two city staff members, Dana Sotheby and Karen Louie, who are, Karen's a landscape architectural planner, and Dana is a planner with the city, and both have achieved their registered professional planner, their RPP designation from the Ontario Professional Planners Institute. So the RPP designation is a combination of education and job experience, professional learning courses, and not an easy exam. Congratulations to you both on achieving your designation. That's a significant milestone in your careers. Due to the COVID-19 physical distancing measures, of course, the committee is meeting virtually tonight. The executive management team and the city clerk are participating, deputy city clerk tonight. Our city clerk is absent tonight. They're all participating. We're all participating via video conference. Members of the senior leadership team who have reports on tonight's agenda are available to answer questions. We do have just the one staff report on tonight's agenda. So it is the only item on our consent agenda. I will just ask if any members of committee wish to hold the staff report that's on tonight's agenda. Okay, seeing none, that is approved on consent, and that is with regards to 932 Mapleview Drive East. That application, it's a zoning bylaw amendment application, has been approved by committee, and it will go forward to council for final consideration on Monday, May 10th. Okay, so our one item of business then tonight will be to hold a public meeting for 217 Dunlop Street East. This is an application for zoning bylaw amendment submitted by MITCHINSON Planning and Development Consultants, Inc. on behalf of PBM Realty Holdings. Although registration prior to the meeting to speak was encouraged, if you have not yet registered, if you're on tonight's call and or watching us tonight and you wish to speak, what you need to do is email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 705-797-5353, and staff will send you the information required to participate in the meeting. So just email or call now if you are watching and wish to speak, or at any point during the meeting. Members of Planning Committee tonight, we will be listening to the presentation by the applicant and, of course, listening to any comments received from members of the public who wish to speak tonight. We will not be providing our comments or debating this tonight because it's not a night for a decision. It's a night to hear comments and be introduced to the application first of all. At the time that the staff report is considered by the committee at a later date, councillors will have their opportunity to debate and discuss the issue at that point. If you are on the call or watching and interested in being notified when that will occur, when the report will come to council for decision, please email the Legislative Services branch. That's again cityclerks@barrie.ca. And our procedure tonight will have the applicant present the development proposal. We will hear from our staff in terms of an update on the application and comments received. There will then be an opportunity, of course, for anybody on the call from members of the public to give us their comments on the application. And after that, I will give the ward councillor an opportunity to ask any questions of clarification. And at that point, that is the end of the public meeting. But again, the discussion and debate of this approval will not occur tonight. It'll be when the staff report's presented to committee at a later date. Ms. Banfield, Director of Development Services, could you confirm that notification for this public meeting was conducted in accordance with the Planning Act?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it was.
Thank you very much. I will now call on Nicola Mitchinson of Mitchinson Planning and Development Consultants to provide the presentation concerning the application for zoning bylaw amendment for 217 Dunlop Street East. Ms. Mitchinson, welcome to Planning Committee, and the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor Lehman. Thank you for the introduction, and good evening, members of Planning Committee, city staff, and those of you who are joining us by YouTube. I'm a registered professional planner, and kudos to those two new members that you identified earlier in the meeting. Congratulations. And I'm the president of MITCHINSON Planning and Development Consultants. It's my pleasure to attend this evening's meeting on behalf of the project owner and on behalf of our consulting team. Now, if you'll just hold for a few seconds, I will convert my screen to share so that you can see the PowerPoint presentation. And can everyone see the screen?
Yes, we can. That's great.
Perfect. Thank you. So as Mayor Lehman indicated, the purpose of this evening's meeting is a Planning Act meeting, and it's to us to review and present an application to rezone lands located at 217 Dunlop Street East. The application proposes to amend the City of Barrie Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw number 2009-141 by rezoning the site from Central Area Commercial, or C1-1, and Transition Center Commercial, C2-1, to a Transition Center Commercial Special Exception or Special Provision Zone. And I will speak to those special provisions later on in the presentation. The rezoning itself will facilitate the development of a 15-story mixed-use condominium development, and it's comprised of 41 residential units, approximately 402 square meters of commercial space, and a 3-story integrated parking structure. It's important to note that the residential and commercial uses are permitted under both zone categories, and that it's just some of the zone standards or development provisions that we have to amend as part of the zoning bylaw. And this is a similar practice to many intensification projects that have been recently approved by the City of Barrie. The particular zone provisions that relate to this development include building height, gross floor area, setbacks, landscape strips, and parking. Overall, from a big picture perspective, given this key waterfront downtown location and the very special neighborhood in which it's located, the building and the site have been very carefully designed by our design team with a number of criteria in mind. First and foremost is conformity with provincial and City of Barrie planning policies. Secondly is to implement Barrie City Centre, urban growth center, and intensification objectives. Thirdly, to complement and enhance Barrie's urban growth center, its waterfront skyline and the surrounding uses and the surrounding neighborhood. And also, most importantly, to minimize potential impacts on adjoining uses. The property itself is owned by a corporation, 217 Dunlop Street East, which is affiliated with PBM Realty Holding Inc. And the owner of those companies is Mr. Peter Moore. Many of you may know Peter. He's a long-standing resident and employer in the Barrie community. This is a legacy project for Peter and his family. And rumor has it that Peter has his dibs on the penthouse suite in this particular building. The property itself is located at 217 Dunlop Street East. And just a moment. Cursor is not cooperating. I apologize. Oh, there we go. It's outlined in yellow. And the property is located on the south side of Dunlop Street East, on the west side of Sampson Street, and on the east side of Bursey Street. It also adjoins the North Shore Trail, the city's North Shore Trail and waterfront park system. Obviously, Kempenfelt Bay is to the south. The property is actually a registered brownfield site. Many of you may remember the former Cotty's Cleaner facility that was located on that site. Those buildings were demolished in 2003. So as a consequence of the former use, the property has undergone extensive environmental testing over the past 10 years. And as a result of those tests, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks is satisfied that development of the site can proceed. The ministry has issued what's known as a record of site condition and a certificate of property use, and development of the site is mandated to comply with these very stringent provincial requirements, development requirements. This slide identifies, pardon me, a property survey. It was undertaken in October of 2020. You can see that the property has about 58 meters of frontage along the south side of Dunlop Street. It has a depth of approximately 34 meters, so it's not a very deep site and it's not a wide site. It also falls from north to south with a fairly significant grade of about 15% on the property. It's interesting to note with this particular site that the eastern portion of the Sampson Street right-of-way was conveyed by the city to the property owner several years ago. And the west side of Sampson Street is an unopened road allowance. An important component of this particular project is to enhance that road allowance so that there is an opportunity for improved access from Dunlop Street through to the North Shore Trail to the south. From an official plan designation or a policy perspective, the subject site is outlined in red, and it's designated as city center, as are many of the adjoining lands to the east. The city center designation permits and encourages a broad range of retail, service, office, and institutional and residential uses. Those uses, so the uses that are being proposed on this site comply with the permitted uses in the city center designation, and an official plan amendment is not required to facilitate this development. From the perspective of intensification and urban growth center, as you can see, the site is identified in red again. The urban growth center is identified in a sort of a pale yellow color and surrounds the site, particularly to the west, as well as on the east side of Bursey Street. And the built up area is even larger, and that's identified in the pale gray color. The city's urban growth center is the focus for growth and development, and that's in accordance with provincial policy statement, the provincial policy statement, the Places to Grow Act and plan, as well as the City of Barrie's official plan. And it's important that the application achieve a density target of 150 persons and jobs per hectare, which this development does. It actually achieves a density target of approximately 351 persons and units per hectare. From a zoning perspective, as I indicated previously, the property is zoned, it has a split zone. It's zone C11 on the west side and C2-1 on the east side. The balance of the surrounding lands have a mixture of C2 and C1 zoning. Lands to the east have a variety of residential uses, as well as a couple of pockets of commercial uses. The uses, as I mentioned, are permitted on this site. And then again, the zoning bylaw reinforces the situation of the site within the boundary identified by the dashed line of the city's urban growth center. The project itself is unique to the developments that have been presented in Barrie over the past months and years. This particular site is a landmark site, and it's envisioned to be one of Barrie's most desirable downtown waterfront locations. The building itself has been designed with a number of luxury components in mind. There are only 41 units proposed. The reason being is that the design itself is not based on a central corridor layout. So there's no central corridor with units on either side of the corridor. The units themselves actually extend the entire depth of the building from the front Dunlop Street heading south to the waterfront. So the units range in size from about 2,200 to 4,100 square feet with a very large penthouse at about 7,400 square feet. The units are accessed by private elevators for enhanced security and privacy. The units, given the unit sizes, they have gourmet kitchens and great rooms, fireplaces, smart home technology. The balconies are extremely large and provide very significant and important outdoor amenity area for the residents, and they can include such features as outdoor kitchens, spas, and 3-season enclosures. The bylaw itself requires 41 parking spaces. This development is providing 53 spaces. There is also an opportunity to provide an additional approximately 113 spaces in total, or 60 additional spaces through the use of tandem parking or vehicle lifts, should the owner decide to choose that option. There's plenty of storage for bicycles. There's a separate bicycle storage room, and also each of the parking spaces have their own private storage lockers adjacent to them for storage of sports equipment, including bicycles. And also a very important component of the building is that it's being designed to a LEED standard and above and beyond. Sorry. The building itself is founded on innovative architectural design, which uses high quality materials and finishes and facade treatments to create interest and an attractive visual presentation of the building. As I previously mentioned, it adjoins Kempenfelt Bay and is located within an easy walking and cycling distance to public transit and to a range of office, retail, entertainment, institutional, and public service utilities, which are located downtown. And I think I also mentioned that the project proposes significant improvements to the city-owned Sampson Street unopened right-of-way, grading, stairs, landscapes, so that there will be enhanced access from Dunlop Street to the city North Shore Trail. In accordance with Barrie's application requirements, there were a number of technical reports that were prepared for the project. They related to planning in terms of provincial and city planning policy conformity and consistency. The reports also related to urban design components, which are very important, particularly with respect to intensification projects. The urban design brief prepared by Salter Pilon Architect addressed urban design, tall building requirements, block plans, context plans, lighting or illumination impacts, shadow cast impacts, wind and microclimate. And finally, there were a number of environmental and engineering reports that were required for the project, including brownfield site investigations, natural heritage, features and functions evaluations, geotechnical reports, hydrogeological, functional servicing, stormwater management, and traffic. So a fairly typical but very extensive range of studies were prepared, and the analysis and conclusions of the studies confirm that the project can be supported both from a planning policy and from a detailed technical perspective. It's important to note that the application and the detailed reports have been circulated to City of Barrie departments and to other commenting agencies. I'm pleased to advise that no major concerns or objectives have been raised to date through the circulation process, and that technical comments and conditions received thus far are standard. The city's transportation department has approved the development's traffic impact study, and the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority has no objections to the application. At this stage in the process, our team is continuing to work cooperatively and innovatively with Barrie staff to address and finalize the comments that they have regarding the application. And now onto the building itself. As you can see, these are architectural renderings that have been prepared for both the north or front portion of the building facing on Dunlop Street, as well as the south building facade that faces out towards the lake. The primary focus of the building obviously is our gorgeous Lake Simcoe, Kempenfelt Bay. So these very large, expansive balcony outdoor amenity areas are one of the primary focuses of the building. You can see that the actual building design has a number of articulations and different treatments to try and create visual interest within the building itself. The garage is attractively landscaped, and the facade of the garage is broken up by a number of architectural treatments and windows to avoid a large expanse of paved wall, which encloses the parking structure. And it's a 3-story parking structure at sort of the lower level, ground level, and the second floor. The front of the building has an exceptional presence on Dunlop Street, a very open and accessible and prominent entranceway, plus again, very interesting architectural relief features throughout the building to enhance its presentation to the street. This is a sample floor plan. It's the floor plan for the ground level floor, the main entrance, the lobby areas, the commercial space that is located on the first floor. And it also indicates access to the building itself. So given the design of the site and the fact that the building is not wide enough to be able to accommodate ramping in and up to various levels of parking, we require 2 accesses to the site. So the first access is on the west side, and that particular access provides access, or that driveway provides access to the lower level. So not L1, which is the ground level, but the lower level parking. Then there is an access on the west side, the east side of the building that is divided into 2 portions. The western portion of that entranceway provides access into level 1 of the building, and the westerly portion of the westerly access provides access to level 2. And that was required to ensure that we had traffic, significant and traffic flow, unencumbered traffic flow, both on the site and along Dunlop Street. The next slide is indicative of a floor plan, and is just as an example of floors 4 to 10 include 4 units. Floors 11 to 14 have 2 units, and then the 15th floor is the penthouse with 1 large unit. And as I indicated previously, you can see that the actual units flow from Dunlop Street all the way to the south with very large balconies. Each of the units have to have stairways for emergency purposes, and then elevators enter directly into each of the suites. From a context perspective, this aerial photo was prepared by Salter Pilon as part of the urban design brief, and it helps you to picture the final built form in relationship to the surrounding community. And as we can see, it almost forms a bit of an apex, with the 3 buildings along the waterfront being 217 at 15 stories, the Flamenco at 8 stories, and Lac House at 10 stories being the waterfront component. And then we have 15-story buildings to the west located at Bayshore, And then as we head easterly, we have another 15-story building at Bay Club, 10 stories at Collier Terrace, and 7 stories. So what this slide indicates from my perspective is that this is very much a mixed-use neighborhood with a range of built forms, low density, mid-rise, and certainly high-rise development to the east, beside, and to the west. And then, of course, as you start to span out further to the north, there are other larger buildings. The block plan is a similar perspective. It's just a slightly different shading, and again, helps to illustrate the mixed use nature of the neighborhood and the fact that this 15-story building is certainly consistent and appropriate and compatible with the built forms that occur in this neighborhood. 15 stories to the east, 10, 6, 15 to the west, and the 10 and 8 stories just further or closer to the west of the site. From a community context perspective, we prepared this slide to, again, show the relationship in land uses as you progressed outward from the site in spans of 240 meters, 400 meters, 500 meters, and 700 meters. 400 to 500 meters is considered a suitable walking distance for most people. So it's easy to see that, for example, at 217, we're within easy walking distance to public transit that's located along Collier Street, within easy walking distance to community parks to the west, to the east, the waterfront park system, within easy walking distance to City Hall, which is located here, and then the library, which is located a little further away, as well as to a variety, well, the McLaren is located here, but also to a wide variety of retail, restaurant, and entertainment facilities, as well as offices downtown. We included the conceptual site plan because it's a little bit less cluttered than the detailed site plan, and it's included for 2 key reasons. One is in relationship to the setbacks and the transition to adjoining uses. So from an orientation perspective, Dunlop Street to the north, the North Shore Trail to the south, and the building and the site obviously is outlined in red. In terms of the building's relationship to the Flamenco building to the west, it's important to recognize that we have we've identified 6 meters, but there could be the 6.5. We tend to underestimate so that during construction, there's a little bit of flexibility and we don't have to come back for minor variances. But based on a 6.5 meter building setback from the property line, plus the additional width from the Sampson Street road allowance, the distance between this building and the property line of the Flamenco building is close to 14 meters, or approximately 46 feet. So the functional separation and setback is almost, even though the applicant doesn't own this property, is very close to the setback required by the zoning bylaw. Similarly, on the east side of the building, we have the setback itself on the property, plus the owner also owns the house at 1 Kempenfelt Drive. When the property itself plus the property at 1 Kempenfelt Drive is added together, there's a separation distance and a transition distance of 17 meters, or about 56 feet. And in fact, that distance widens at the south end because the property flares out a little bit. So these are very significant separation distances between this building and the adjoining uses, and actually they're fairly unusual within the context of Barrie and some other developments that have been proposed. So we're very happy to be able to utilize this situation to again help minimize impacts on the adjoining uses. So that was the one reason. The second reason was to discuss the landscape buffer. So the zoning bylaw requires a continuous, unobstructed 3-meter landscape buffer around the entire perimeter of the property, as well as a 6-meter landscape buffer along the frontage. A landscape buffer of that width would essentially negate the viability of the project. So instead of identifying and facilitating those full buffers, we've augmented the landscaping. So it's very high quality landscaping, high density landscaping, and it focuses in strategic areas. So the strategic areas in our view are obviously the frontage along Dunlop Street, okay, the landscaping that would be presented along Dunlop Street. There isn't sufficient room for a landscape strip in this location because of the entrance ramps. However, there's a very significant pocket of landscaping that's in excess of 9 meters in this location. There is landscaping all the way along the south facade of the building to help transition between the building and the North Shore Trail. There's another landscaping area of very significant width in the southwest corner. And then also, and you'll see this on the next slide, is all the landscaping that the proponent is providing to improve the unopened road allowance and access to the North Shore Trail. So that's a little bit more identifiable in the detailed site plan. There's a lot of clutter, a lot of information on this site plan, but you're able to see the key landscape treatments within this particular site plan. So all of this description has been leading up to why we require certain exceptions to the C1 and C2 zone provisions. This is a table that identifies the zone provisions required by the zoning bylaw, and the provisions that we're seeking exception to are highlighted in yellow for ease of reference. I've spoken to them in general terms, of with respect to the presentation. We'll deal first with the zoning related to the side yard setbacks. So I think I illustrated the east side yard setback, which is towards the Kempenfeld side, as well as the west side yard setback. Sorry, my cursor has a mind of its own this evening. The west side in relationship to Flamenco. We're seeking a setback of 6 meters. The requirement is 17.5, and I think I indicated through that functional analysis we're at 17 meters. Similarly, on the west side, we're seeking 6 meters. We're at 14 meters and over, which again satisfies the intent of that particular bylaw requirement. The next special provision that we're seeking is with respect to lot coverage or the percentage of commercial. And this is based on my review of a number of projects in Barrie, the commercial component seems to be a consistent challenge for developments to meet. And in our application, instead of 50%, we're looking for 20% of commercial space or 402 square meters. And actually in our discussions with staff in relationship to other items, there was discussion around the commercial space. And in the interests of full transparency, what we would like to pursue with staff is an opportunity to, before a decision is made by council, to see if we can actually reduce the amount of commercial space a little bit further. We were thinking at about 10% or about 200 square meters. The reason being is that the commercial is not only located at the ground floor, the commercial space for this site is located on the second floor. So think of Bayshore, for example, where you have ground floor retail, offices, and restaurants, and then there's a second story of commercial uses. It's very challenging to lease out commercial space on the second floor. And that space, it's not as accessible, it's not as visible, and consequently, it's not as viable. In looking at the range of commercial uses, there's a huge range of commercial uses in downtown Barrie. Unfortunately, there are a lot of vacancies in downtown Barrie, and I know everyone's working extremely hard to try and deal with that situation. But in our view, adding additional space on a second floor, which could be challenging, is worth further discussion and review to see if there is an opportunity to reduce that required space to 10% from the 20. The other special provisions that we're seeking relate to maximum gross floor area. There's a range within the two zones, 600% and 400%. We're at 595%. The building height, I'm sure, is of the most significant concern to neighbors. The 30-meter or a 10-story building is permitted as of right on this site. Our building is 56 meters or 15 stories, and similarly that applies to the setback provisions. Given the size of the site and the design of the building, so these units that extend from front to back, it's impossible to create a podium or a stepping back of the building. We certainly looked at various options, and you end up with a spire, basically a 1 or 2 unit spire in the middle of the building. So as a consequence, we are seeking exceptions across the board for the 56 meters, 15 stories. And we hope through the landscaping, the separation distances, and the actual architectural treatments on the building itself, that we're actually achieving the objectives of those 2 requirements. I spoke earlier to the landscape buffer. As I mentioned, a 3-meter is required. That's a continuous buffer. We've identified 0, but we know that the design actually provides a buffer that varies from 0 up to 8 meters and 9 meters in size. And then finally, with respect to the parking, we meet the residential commercial parking requirements. 41 spaces are required, 53 typical, so we exceed that requirement. 53 are provided. There is an opportunity for 60 more for a total of 113. These again are optional and under consideration. The most important thing is that we meet and exceed the residential component. From a commercial perspective, the C1 zone doesn't require on-site commercial parking. The C2 zone does, and based on the commercial space that we're currently proposing, 17 spaces are required. We are proposing no commercial parking spaces for this development, mainly because of some of the challenges within the internal configuration of the building, but also there is a lot of available parking space on the streets in close proximity to this particular site. In conclusion, and I know I've spoken a lot, but in conclusion, based on the analysis of the applicable provincial and City of Barrie planning policies, as well as on the findings and conclusions of the various technical reports, we feel the zoning bylaw amendment for 217 Dunlop Street East is consistent with the relevant policies of the provincial policy statement. It conforms with the relevant policies of the Places to Grow, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. It conforms with the applicable policies of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, conforms with the policies of the City of Barrie's official plan. It conforms and complies with the applicable provisions of the City of Barrie's comprehensive zoning bylaw, with, of course, the exceptions that we spoke to previously. The application represents an infill intensification project, which is located in Barrie's built-up area, its downtown city center, and its urban growth center, all of which encourage a broad range of uses and which are the local and regional focus for growth, development, and intensification. The development will assist the city in achieving its intensification and density targets. The development enables the safe, effective and efficient redevelopment of an underutilized brownfield site, which has received a ministry-approved record of site condition and certificate of property use. It's also important to note that the City of Barrie's official plan policies encourage the reuse and redevelopment of brownfield sites. The site can be serviced in an environmentally sound manner in accordance with provincial, City of Barrie, Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority servicing requirements and best management practices. The development will not negatively impact significant natural heritage features and functions, sensitive surface water features and functions, sensitive groundwater features and functions, or public health and safety. The project helps to contribute towards the achievement of a complete community by permitting high-density residential condominium units with residents who will help support downtown commercial, institutional, and public service facilities. The development provides a small amount of commercial space, which also generates employment opportunities and which promotes continued investment and revitalization in downtown Barrie and along Barrie's main street. Because the site can be serviced by existing services, it optimizes the efficient and cost-effective use of existing municipal infrastructure and servicing capacity, including public transit. It supports active transportation, and it provides improved public access to Barrie's North Shore Trail and waterfront park system. The development implements a compact built form, which is founded on innovative, high-quality urban design, urban design, building design, and landscape treatment. It's attractive, functional, and also importantly, sustainable. It enhances the public realm and the relationship between public and private spaces. It's consistent and compatible with the neighborhood and minimizes impacts on surrounding uses. And finally, in my professional opinion, I feel the application is in the public interest and represents good planning. Your worship and members of Planning Committee, that concludes my presentation. I would be pleased to answer any questions, and I will now pass my screen share back over to you, if I can.
Thanks very much for the presentation. I'll call on Michelle Banfield, our Director of Planning, to give us an update on the status of the application. Ms. Banfield.
Thank you for the introduction, and good evening, Mayor Lehman and members of Planning Committee. Planning staff are currently undertaking the technical review associated with this application. The neighborhood meeting was held in October of last year, where approximately 58 residents were in attendance, as well as the applicant, development representatives, the Ward 1 and Ward 2 councillors, as well as planning staff. The comments that we heard at that time were the appropriateness of the building height, including concerns with shadow impacts, privacy, loss of views, and impacts and potential impacts for birds on bird strikes. Concerns with the setbacks, the buffers, step backs, and the transitions to the adjacent properties, as well as concerns about the traffic impacts that will be generated by the proposed development. We also heard some questions about access to the North Shore Trail, the provision of affordable housing, the types of commercial uses that might be proposed, the type of waste removal system that might be used, as well as some ownership questions respecting the water lots around the development. So matters that are currently being reviewed by staff include the appropriateness of the proposed amendments and the requested special provisions, the potential impacts these may have on the surrounding neighborhood, including traffic and North Shore Trail access, as well as servicing, and the integration of the proposed development into the surrounding area. A detail of these considerations will be provided when the staff report is brought back to Planning Committee. So staff will continue to work with the applicant and their consulting team to address any feedback received through the public consultation, as well as any comments that we hear from the technical analysis by our team, as well as our agency partners. These items may require revisions or updates to the plans and reports submitted in support of these applications. All of the comments that we hear, including what we hear tonight, will be included in the final staff report when a recommendation is provided to Planning Committee on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Staff are anticipating this to happen either in the late part of the summer or the early part of the fall of 2021. Everything, as always, all submission materials, key dates, and everything associated with this application is available online on the city's proposed development website under Ward 2. And alternatively, you can also reach out directly to the file manager, Jordan Lambie. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for the update, Ms. Banfield. Just a reminder to members of the public, anyone watching who wishes to speak at tonight's public meeting, you do now need to call in or email to get the instructions on how to join. The email is cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 705-797-5353 and staff will send you the information you need to participate tonight. If you are registered to speak, we have a small number of folks who've registered to speak for tonight's meeting. If you have registered to speak, I will just call your name and we'll bring you into the meeting. Please give us your name and address for the record of the public meeting and then give us your comments. Questions will be noted by staff, but we don't do question and answer back and forth. This is the opportunity for comment tonight. But all questions received tonight will be addressed in the staff report presented to council for a decision at a later date. So with that, I will call on the first person who registered, and that is Kathy and Jerry Bruce. Kathy and Jerry. There we are. Welcome to Planning Committee. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
All right, Kathy, go ahead.
Okay. Change. We all know what happens, but please make a decision now that won't be regretted in our future. It is absurd that a 15-story building could be squeezed onto only 0.2 hectares of an irregular shaped lot. It would tower well above nearby buildings, resulting in an unsightly skyline. Is Barrie City Council willing to approve this amendment proposal to gain provincial funding because of the Ontario's Places to Grow Act, plus additional property tax money? Elected representatives are expected to truly care how existing property owners and neighbors feel about how this proposed high-rise would impact nearby residents on a daily basis. People choose to live in Barrie or relocate here because they enjoy the small city atmosphere Barrie offers. Why turn Barrie into another overly congested, high-rise, busy concrete corridor version of Toronto? The original proposal for this property was for 6 stories. This current proposal would result in a tall, skinny tower, double the height of the building immediately to its west, the Flamenco, and 13 stories taller than the house immediately to the east. The Lake House building, 2 properties to the west, will be 10 stories high. Nearby residences will lose property, privacy, and become victims of shadowing. Despite what traffic studies indicate, this intersection is already a safety concern while exiting and entering driveways on the west end of Kempenfelt Drive. Pedestrian, dog walking, jogger, bicycle, e-bike, stroller, assistive walker, wheelchair, inline skate, and skateboard activity is heavy, which complicates safe driveway access. 3 additional driveways at 217 Dunlop East will worsen traffic safety in this neighborhood. Sampson, Bursey, Dunlop East, and Kempenfelt streets all converge right by 217 Dunlop. Crossing the road is already not easy. There are certainly properties within city boundaries that would better provide a more appropriate location for such a tall pillar without directly impeding privacy and creating shadows on nearby homes. Why do we have height restrictions in our bylaws if they're never complied with? Solid wall of concrete does nothing positive for a livable shared waterfront. The proposed zoning, which includes commercial, would only contribute to additional traffic and parking constraints to this neighborhood. The building at number 1 Kempenfelt is already used commercially, increasing vehicle and staff traffic. When the proposed underground parking needs regular repairs and maintenance, where will condo owners park? Parking is already overcrowded on nearby neighborhood streets. This proposed building is too tall, covers too much land surface, is out of character, creates unwanted building shadowing, and will not contribute positively to the existing neighborhood. This tall, narrow structure will not respectfully blend into the existing built fabric of this neighborhood as required as a principle of intensification for Barrie. Presently, we have a busy public trail at the back of our properties, a busy sidewalk and road at the front, and this proposed building will also create no privacy from above our backyards. It's like living in a fishbowl. COVID's additional busyness forces us to drive beyond our neighborhood to safely and adequately exercise. Heavy densification will permanently make this an ongoing situation. Please consider how approving this variance would negatively affect neighbors. Allowing proposed height variances will create unwanted shadowing. A towering needle-like structure placed in a neighborhood of predominantly low-rise century buildings does not improve anything. Make a decision that can be respected. Show that Barrie City Council actually cares about residents invested in their neighborhood. Stand up for what is right for those directly affected by decisions made by council. Change will occur, but choose appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bruce. Thank you for those comments. We have received them, and if you do send written correspondence, that will be circulated. Madam Deputy Clerk.
Mayor Lehman, if we could get the caller's name and address, please, just for the records. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, Kathy, Jerry, we need your address for the record of the meeting.
5 and 7 Kempenfeld.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, and thank you for being here. I will call on our next registered speaker, and that is Gary Calvert from Mecca Properties, Inc. Mr. Calvert, welcome to Planning Committee of Barrie City Council. And the floor is yours. And we can't hear Mr. Calvert yet. Gary, I don't know if that's on your end or on ours, but we can't hear you or see you. There we go. Now we can hear you. Oh. Well, we could for a moment there. Try again.
Mayor Lehman.
There we
can you
go.
hear me?
Now we can hear you, Mr. Calvert. Go ahead.
Mr. Lehman, at this point, I have no concerns. There's a communication problem between perhaps the clerk's office and myself. I have no comments this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We also had registered Victoria Paduti from Mecca. Is Ms. Paduti here or wanting to speak? I don't see her. Okay, I will make a call for additional speakers. If there is anyone else, last call, who wishes to speak as part of this public meeting, please right away email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 797-5353 to get the information you need to be able to speak tonight. The rules of procedure that we have adopted for Planning Committee, we do allow the ward councillor alone to ask questions if he or she wishes. And that is to allow any concerns that people who couldn't be here have forwarded to the ward councillor and any local issues that you want clarification on. So I will now go to Councillor Aylwin, and one more call out to those watching. If you do want to speak, please call or email right away. And sorry, Councillor Aylwin, Madam Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Mayor Lehman, we do have one person we're just registering right now who'd called in.
Okay, thank you. I will go to Councillor Aylwin, and then we'll bring up our final public speaker. Councillor Aylwin, go ahead if you have any questions or clarification.
That's great. Thank you, Mayor Lehman. And thank you, Kathy and Jerry Bruce, for being here. I do have a question for the applicant, and it's around the parking. So you're proposing 3 times the required parking, which seems excessive in an area that's supposed to be pedestrian friendly, cycling friendly. Have you given consideration to going with the parking that's required and potentially looking at reducing the height of the building, as that seems to be a major concern in the community?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Aylwin, thank you for the question. The function of parking, because of the nature of the building, because the units are very large, is really a function of trying to provide more than one parking space per unit. So unlike other developments that are reducing the amount of parking on a per unit basis, this development seeks to increase the amount of internal parking. So it's not the parking that's really creating the height, although there are 3 stories of parking. It's the function of parking being an integral component of units of ranging in size from 2,200 to 4,500 square feet. I think you'll note driving around Barrie that many homes of smaller sizes have multiple vehicles. As much as we are all in favor and promoting public transit, enhanced public transit, active transportation, and those are all objectives which we can fulfill within this particular project. At the end of the day, people purchasing these units will have 2 or more cars. So there is a need for these units to be able to provide that type of parking. Keep in mind that there's only 41 units in a 15-story building. By comparison, the Lack House development is 10 stories and it has over 180 units. So while the building is tall, it's tall because of the design of the units. The ceiling heights are 9 and 10 feet in height. So it's not that someone's being greedy, that there is an excessive number of units. It's the specific design elements and amenities that are being provided for this development. Parking is one of them.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I do want to turn to the issue of setbacks, and specifically the western setback from the Flamenco building. So correct me if I'm wrong, you're proposing 13.8 meter setback when you include that driveway and then the actual setback. And what's required is 14.25. That's correct?
Correct.
Okay, and what is the actual separation, tower separation between your proposal and Flamenco?
The distance that we've identified is from our building. So the 13.8 is from our building to the Flamenco property line. I would have to evaluate a survey of the Flamenco property to see just how far inside the property line the Flamenco building is located. But
Okay.
so I can certainly check that and get back to you. I don't know offhand how far in the Flamenco is located from its respective property boundary. So that 13.8 or 14 meters is measured from our building to the most westerly property limit of the next building.
Okay.
Or the
Thank you.
west limit of Sampson Street, which is the east property limit of the Flamenco.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I would be interested to know that actual tower separation.
Certainly.
And since 14.25 meters is required, why? I think I heard you say that the project wouldn't be viable if you were to meet that requirement. Less than a meter, about half a meter, is that would prevent the project from being viable if you were to look to meet that requirement? Sorry,
for which particular component?
So you're proposing 13.8 meter setback on the western side. What's required is 14.25. I guess
Right.
Technically you're not proposing a 13.8 meter setback, but that's a technicality. And you said the project wouldn't be viable if you were to meet that 14.25. Why is that?
So let me clarify. If that was my statement, I must have misspoken.
Okay.
I know that the project is challenged from a viability perspective if we have to accommodate a 6 meter front yard setback from Dunlop Street, because the property itself is 34 meters deep. So a 6 meter landscape strip starts to just reduce the building envelope significantly. The setback from the Flamenco is we're almost achieving what the bylaw requires. The bylaw requires 14.25. And because of the Sampson Street setback, we're almost at that distance. So we almost comply, which is, again, very unusual within the urban context of Barrie and developments that have been approved. I know every development needs to be evaluated on the merits of its own site and surrounding uses, etc. But we're almost achieving a setback that has not been achieved before. once we start stepping in the building, right, because there's a stepping in provision, and to try and create platforms or podiums whereby you have a stepped in and then the building goes up, and then another step in and the building goes up. Because of the internal design of the units, when we start to step in, the units themselves then become extremely narrow. They start to become virtual bowling alleys, or we have to start to eliminate even more. So there's only 41 units, so then we have to eliminate even more units. So you end up with a very narrow, almost spire feature in the middle of the building because of those setback requirements. So the good news is that we can meet the setback, but we can't step in the building. So we can't create a building with step-ins, but we can physically meet the setback at the walls of the building, at the straight vertical walls of the building. So in an effort to try and address that, the architecture of the building has different relief, has different architectural treatments, the use of different building materials to create the illusion of a step in or a setback, but physically the building itself is 14 meters away from the next building. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, I think so. I'll probably be following up after.
Certainly.
But I do have another question, and it was something I raised at the neighborhood meeting as well. And that's the goal of 10% affordable units in all new developments. I realize this is a luxury waterfront proposed development, but I think that actually might make it more important that we ask this question. What is the applicant doing to try to meet that goal of 10% affordable units in all new developments?
So in terms of this particular development, and as we expressed at the neighborhood meeting, there is not an affordable housing component within the 41 units proposed. The requirement for a 10% affordable housing to achieve 10% is not a mandatory requirement. It's a desirable requirement. It's one that I, as a planner, feel very strongly about and feel is important. I also know that there are other mechanisms and opportunities for developers to contribute to affordable housing initiatives without actually having to provide an on-site affordable housing piece. And that is something that I feel very strongly that this group can speak to the city about. In my estimation, true affordable housing is housing that's required to a very vulnerable population. A lot of the affordable housing that is being created in Barrie is not necessarily targeting that vulnerable population. And I feel that monetary contributions to the city and to a housing authority to create truly affordable housing is one of the best mechanisms to achieve affordable housing. The affordable housing limit in Barrie is very, very low, as you know what that is. And I don't know too many apartments, new apartments that are being built with that level of rent being provided. So our goal would be to work with the city to ensure that that money for affordable units goes to the best source to create the units for that population most in need.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it for my questions of clarification for now, but I will be following up after. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Owen. And we did have one more person register to speak tonight. Mr. Vassoff, I believe, is on the line, and we'll just bring him into the call.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, welcome to Planning Committee, Sebastian. If you can just give us your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, well, I will pretend you didn't repeat my name and say that my name is Sebastian. And my address has changed, hasn't changed, so we'll say that again. We'll call it 608. Just so you guys know, I actually called your line about 5 or 10 times and it kept crashing. The only reason I got in, period, is that I sent the clerk an email afterwards. That's why it took me so long. So if anyone else only called, they may not have even got through. Your phone line didn't work this time, just so you know. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, as to the actual building, I was thinking a few things. One, I'm not sure what exactly can be done about the buildings on either side. If it's tall, it's tall. There's nothing really you can do about not seeing over. As to the very back of the building on the lake shore front is where I was thinking about most of my, was where I was spending most of my thoughts. I see several issues with the building as current, though in a second I'll explain how they could probably actually be, with a very slightly change, become an actual strength. So the issues I see, which are easily rectified, one is that the height of that concrete wall at 3 stories, combined with the fact that I don't see a lot of lighting in the proposal, I'm worried that the trail at the back, while someone like me would go through there at night anyway, I can see lots of people having a perceived safety concern in terms of the actual dark path in behind, especially as you get more and more buildings, which isn't going to be the only one. It's going to be other buildings along that track over the next few years, and who knows, maybe more buildings later on. Hard to tell, 50 years out. Over time, as you get more and more buildings along this path, the nature of that path as current has this sort of like very small town country feel. Whereas not just with this building, but we're sticking to this building, but just keep in mind at a city level, the nature of this path is going to over time transfer into feeling much more like sort of a downtown Toronto waterfront on a much smaller scale. So focusing on this particular building along that train of thought, the fact that the 3 buildings up in concrete, I hear that they put a lot of work into making it look nice. That's a good start, but that just whole living center, I could see certain characters, wanting to use that trail specifically right in the back of this very building, which this is something as someone who builds the building, you might want to think about. I could see certain characters using that little strip right behind your building, combines the dark and the concrete to, hide in this sort of unsavory things. Not that bad, but my point is, you're going to want some light if you're having that, and 2, you want, especially at night, even during the day, you want that path as it go by to feel warm and inviting, not to feel like there's this big concrete at it. So those are some of the issues I had. My thoughts were, how does one incorporate light while incorporating some sort of character, while making it seem more inviting? Well, coming back to, I should say that because I was on that train of thought, a pitch I was throwing out to Deputy Mayor Ward as another part of the downtown, which didn't work there, but this might actually be a very prime candidate for this very idea, is the idea of basically having some sort of, doesn't have to be big, but some sort of a movie screen, not to show ads or anything, because you don't want ads down on the waterfront, but to show, pieces of the Barrie Film Festival. I know the Barrie Film Festival is looking for all sorts of new places right now. This would be an ideal place. You've got a big canvas. It's a big concrete wall. It's a big concrete wall, which is a canvas. It's something where a screen would provide light. It would provide light, especially at night, to keep the safety. So it checks the safety piece. It would provide character. So you go from having a big concrete wall, it's like, boy, I'm going by, to walking by something, again, as long as it's not showing ads, because it can't show ads, but as long as it's showing, short, pieces of art, that either the community puts in, that type of collection or curated work is totally doable at a long scale. And when in the building, let me be clear, if you playing the building, you wouldn't need to create that curation yourself. There are plenty of community partners who I'm sure would be more than happy to help give you that content for you and curate that. So I think this would be an ideal candidate. Again, keeps it safe, provides that light for safety, makes it so you don't have a big concrete wall. And again, because we're talking 3 stories up, the actual and because you've got on either side, so you wouldn't, this type of screen the light wouldn't spill directly over to either house on either side, again, because you've got room on either side, and it wouldn't spill directly over onto the things above because you've got, again, the concrete there. So you've got space so it doesn't move out. In terms of sound, there are ways around that, which, I don't want to sort of get into a huge, trail because that would be that I don't want to like move too far away from the building. But suffice to say, whether it's a small app that would cost pennies on even the screen, or whether it's literally just some sort of a, little pillar that would come out of the ground with like an audio jack you could plug in a pair of headphones to.
Mr. Vassoff, sorry. Mr. Vassoff, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I do need you to comment just on the planning application. It's a very interesting idea, but for the public meeting.
Thank you, Marilyn. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Sorry. I appreciate it. Thank you. So, but anyway, going back to the plan at home, my point is it's doable. That's all. As to the actual building itself, I think there's a lot of other things that should be taken into consideration just in terms of providing that back path along that building. I won't sort of get into them because that's, again, not on the building itself, but on the building itself, you talked about having the ratio of commercial to residential, and the idea that, struggling with how do you create that commercial to residential and complying. I honestly am agreeing with the building that I think there's a lot of commercial space downtown, and especially with all the new things that are going to be off across the city, I don't think that I don't see a need for a ton more commercial space, especially on that second floor. I'm actually in agreement with the building on that. I think realistically, almost having airing on just a little too side of the commercial is actually probably better than too much downtown. Provides sort of a prime real estate feel as well. But on the commercial side, the building is talking a lot about having commercial in the front on that street. Again, is there any way at all to provide a small bit of commercial on the very back, or on the actual trail itself? Not a big piece, just something small, something that would fit the feel of a trail and not fit there. I think that's worth at least asking. There's an opportunity to have, especially your small town cafes, feeling much more, the part of the downtown that we think of as right now, that sort of like small corridor, not the bar strip per se, but that sort of small town feel. I think there's a capacity for that along the trail on the building itself, whereas the more commercial and more like higher end retail, that more heavy commercial, I think would be better suited for the front. So I think it's worth asking, could you have commercial along the back as well? Again, that smaller town feel. That's another question. In terms of, that's
Mr.
all
Vassoff?
I can keep going. I apologize.
Yeah, I'll just ask you to wrap up your comments, but we really appreciate you being here and giving this
I appreciate it. Thank you, Marilyn.
Okay, and of course you can continue to send those in by email or call us about the application, of course, at any point, and appreciate those comments. I will just repeat, and thanks for letting us know, Sebastian, about the challenge you had getting through. The deputy clerks just advised me they did switch up the phone again just to be sure. So if there is anyone calling who has had a challenge getting through and is still watching, please call again right now and we will get you through. Madam Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. We've had one person register, but they have not come online yet. But we are watching for that individual. Okay.
They sent an email or called?
Yes, they sent an email and we've registered them. So we're just watching to see if they do come online.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Thompson, did you have a question?
Thanks, Marilyn. Just a suggestion for some transparency. Maybe we should take a 5-minute recess to give people time to use that phone. And then I know that we've had long meetings and stuff, but just in case.
No, that's okay. It's a good idea. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm just going to repeat those instructions one last time. I did do a final call before, but given the issue that we had, I guess, with the phones, I'll do that again. Just bear with me. I'm pulling up the language here. You'd think I could recite that number by now. There we are.
Excuse
Okay,
me.
so to register folks tonight, I'm just going to read the instructions one more time. Please email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 797-5353. So it's cityclerks@barrie.ca or 797-5353. If there's anyone left watching who was unable to get through, still wants to speak tonight, this is the final call. We will just take a few-minute recess. We'll take 5 minutes and come back at 8:21. We will reconvene, at which point we'll hear from anyone else who has been trying to get through and hopefully can get through now. Sorry, Madam Deputy Clerk, did you have anything else?
We do have Mr. Calvert, who does have his hand up. Just bring that to your attention in case
We
he
will
wishes to
hear
speak.
from Mr. Calvert when we come back in 5 minutes, okay? So 5-minute recess, folks. We'll reconvene at 8:21. Thanks very much. Okay, folks, I'll ask everybody to turn their cameras back on and come on back into the meeting. Okay, I think a few members of council may have dropped off. We will call the meeting back to order. Madam Deputy Clerk, who do we have that wishes to speak?
We do have one more individual, Your Worship. We're just waiting for that individual to sign on. He should be here very shortly.
Okay, and
Thank
did if Mr. Calvert's on, did he wish to speak as well, or is that just a Zoom thing?
I believe he was just going to let us know that there was going to be another individual who registered for tonight, but did not wish to speak, but we might want to
Okay.
confirm with him.
So, sorry, we're just waiting for another member of the public to sign on?
That's correct.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mayor Lehman. We've sent out the second request to a different email address, so we're just awaiting that confirmation that the individual has received it.
Okay.
Sorry for the delay.
That's all right. You know what? Why don't we take another 5 minutes? We're going to reconvene at 8:30, but at that point, if we don't have the deputant, we'll just have to arrange a separate opportunity for them to give their comments to council. So we'll call another 5-minute adjournment. Please turn your cameras back on at 8:30. That'll give a few more minutes for the person to come online. And at that point, we'll hear from our last speaker. So 5 minutes, come back on at 8:30. Thank you. We're adjourned, or not adjourned. We're recessed. Okay, folks, if you can turn your cameras back on, I will call the planning committee meeting back to order. I understand we have Mr. Ferguson on the line now. Joe, welcome to Planning Committee of Barrie City Council. And if we can just get your full name and address for the record, and then go ahead and give us your comments on this planning application.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. My name's Joseph Ferguson. I'm at 177 Bayview Drive. And I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I just want to reiterate what the First Lady was saying there about the building and where it is and where it's structured. I mean, if you look on the maps that they'd provided from on City Council's website, and then you actually go to the Google Earth and take a look, there's a lot of homes around there that will be affected by this building. My boys and I also walk along this trail here. I have two boys, they're 7 and 5. We use this trail not too often, and I often think about the backyards in these people's where their houses are. Their backyards are right on that trail, and I walk along there and you see beer bottles and you see a little bit of litter. It's very clean. The city does a good job, but I kind of wonder how they feel. And
okay, folks, if you can turn your cameras back on, I will call the planning committee meeting back to order. I understand we have Mr. Ferguson on the line now. Joe, welcome.
Oops, sorry about that.
That's okay. That's how I sound through your phone. Now I know.
Yeah, that was on YouTube. Yeah, there's a bit of a delay, but that's all I really wanted to say. And, it's a beautiful spot down there. And like she said, Toronto, I remember in the mid 90s, I was around 10, 12 years old. I remember the city's Toronto skyline. We lived in Mississauga and it was amazing. It was beautiful. When I started having to travel down there with my son, all the condos that had gone up, I couldn't believe how it was enclosed. You used to be able to get a great view of it. And I'd just like to keep that into consideration too when we think about the looks of our city and the skyline, especially the waterfront. And that's all.
All right. Well, we appreciate you bearing with the technical challenges and waiting to give us those comments. And we've heard you and we appreciate that. Do let the clerk's office know if you want to be notified when this is coming forward for a decision. And thanks for your comments tonight, Mr. Ferguson. And folks, with that, I will declare the public meeting concluded. Thank you to everyone who was here for this, and thanks to everyone for bearing with our technical challenges. The only other item of business on Planning Committee's agenda is inquiries of staff. Deputy Mayor Ward, do you have any inquiries of staff?
I have none.
Members of Planning Committee, have you any inquiries of staff? Seeing none, Madam Deputy Clerk, have I forgotten anything?
You have not, Your Worship.
Well, at least there's that. Okay, thanks everyone. We will see you next Monday for General Committee. Good night, everyone.